All right, welcome to another lecture for 1060 Online. Well, we're going to look today specifically, we played off of the kind of job research. We want to look at resume writing specifically today. And we want to think about how you can argue on a page, right? And that's kind of the main theme today is how we can manipulate what you've been learning in 1060 and what you learned in 1050 in order to manipulate those arguments, right, on the page. And so the resume and order will depend pretty much on profession, right? Even layout will depend on profession. A graphic designer's resume is not going to look the same as a teaching resume, and that's not going to look the same necessarily as, let's say, a nonprofit resume, right? So, you always want to, again, research the field. That's the kind of main issue, right? So, some professions may want experience first, right? Other professions may want education first. Others might want to see volunteer work and professional experience. Others might want to see diversity, while others want to see single focus. And so when you look at what the resume does, it gives an important reflection on your experiences. And each profession will require somewhat of a different listing and order, preference, for those experiences. Again, if you're going to work in any kind of educational field, well, you should put your degrees first. If you're going to work just in a regular corporate field, well, the degrees won't really matter too much. And so, it all depends on what profession you're really looking at. No matter what, though, the resume is a very unique document. And you can't trust templates. You have to be very cautious of all sorts of advices out there because they're terrible. While you need to include the obvious, list of job experiences, responsibilities, there is much that you should not include that so many bad templates do for stupid reasons I don't even understand. A title on the top of the page, for example, saying resume of qualifications or confidential resume. This document is the most unique document because it looks like a resume. There's no other document that looks like a resume. Whether it's a cover letter or an essay, they kind of have the similar formats of paragraph breaks and paragraph structure and things like that. This is a list, it's a full list, but it is a list. It's different than any other document you write. I don't know who the jerk is who invented this, but this is repeated time and time again, and it is one of the dumbest waste of spaces that people have on the resume, an objective page, right? It's also obvious. If you're applying for a job, you should want it. You don't need this objective page. Summary of qualifications. Well, what I've seen is they'll have a whole section of summary of qualifications and then the resume itself. That's the whole damn point of a resume, so the resume is a summary of qualifications. You don't need a separate section. Unless you are going to be in some kind of educational field, you don't need to put your GPA. Nobody cares. There are people that you would work for who don't have a college education necessarily, so you don't need to include it. Same thing with months of employment. That kind of gets cumbersome. You just include the years. You don't necessarily have to include months. You also don't include reasons for leaving. That is something that you may discuss in an interview, but you also might not. Depending on if it's good. Any indication of age, sex, religion, or health. This is an issue because I could easily discriminate you against age because I could just say, oh, you're overqualified. That's one of the easiest ways. Same thing actually with ethnicity. I could discriminate you, and there's articles I put up about names, right? Some people, it takes a person with, there's numerous duns, but the difference between that Jose guy using Joe versus Jose, it takes about 8 weeks longer for Jose to be contacted, but when he changes his name to Joe, immediate, even in the same companies that he applied to. So, you have to be careful, and again, the discrimination exists, it's illegal, but it's easy to discriminate you against age because I could just say you're overqualified, and it's easy to discriminate you against sex because typically with names I could figure out if you're a boy or a girl, right? And then I could easily discriminate you against, of course, ethnicity, right? And so you have to be careful. And that's why there are a lot of studies done about this. Hobbies or interests. Again, I've seen an actual composition books say that and gave resume examples, and it had hobbies and interests. That is not what a resume is for. References too. References are a separate document. You may bring in them to the interview, but you don't need to include references available upon request because it's understood. It's a waste of space. Right. And then salary. You never include previous salaries. You discuss this issue only when you have a job offer. That's the kind of key issue there. So you always have to be careful with that. Now, regardless of order, most resumes should obviously include the following: education, as I said, professional experience, any kind of professional training, or any kind of computer or technology skills. This is very important, right? Because not everyone knows how to make a letter in Word. Not everyone knows how to do labeling, right? Mail labels in Word. Not many people know how to use Excel, especially with the graphs and the chart function. So, or even just the summary functions, right? The mathematical functions. So, it's really important that you highlight these skills because not everyone has a good understanding of programs, even though we use certain ones on a regular basis, for Word, for example. But you may not know all the intricacies. And if you do know, that's really good because not a lot of people do. Awards, honors, memberships to certain organizations can help, but again, know the company, know the field. Certifications are always necessary too. If you have forklift training, for certain jobs, awesome. If you have security clearance, awesome. And so again, you just want to cater to the specific profession in mind. Now, really, one of the most important aspects of any resume is to be specific and concise. Typically, you want to keep most essays to a page or two. You don't go overboard. However, other professions, such as professor or CEO, require a much longer resume, or what's called curricula vitae, a CV. In general, you should always maintain a quickly readable resume, no matter how long it is or no matter how long you should make it. But again, typically in our professions, right, in teaching profession, you have a very long resume, right, because ego and all that stuff. But with other professions, people just want to keep it quick and simple. So a lot of times you'll just have a page or two, right? You won't really go more than that. And that's something very important to consider. As I said, the templates usually are bad. If you go on Google, if you go use Word, the templates are pretty poor. Although no exact format exists, you need to be mindful of how the resume looks, not simply what it relates. And the visual is important. So don't trust those templates because they're not designed by people in the field. The people's resumes you should trust are the people who have a job in the field you want. If there's an ideal job out there and someone's in it, find their resume because they got that way for the resume typically. So research and find their resumes. Find people who have the job you want. Don't simply find one person. Find many, right? Every resume is different, so combine what has worked and what you like. And that's the kind of key issue. Very snowflake-esque. Resumes look completely different. And everyone's very successful, but it's just, resumes look very different. Again, don't trust even the unemployment office or workshops. You have to know what the field wants and prefers. Many people are not knowledgeable about each specific field, and that's the key issue. Again, I know a certain amount of fields, but I don't know all. And so they have invented formats that don't really translate to different professions. So you really want to be cautious of, again, trusting templates, trusting people who aren't in the field, really research, to find those resumes. So let's look at some examples, right, of real resumes. So I'm about to show you two resumes and just kind of look at visually your reaction and think about what's happening here. Now, this is a real resume. Again, the names have been changed to kind of protect the stupid, but you just think about how this looks visually, right, on the page, right? It's very visually pleasing, Think about it, what the information we have. So we have his name and address, but we don't have his email. We don't have his number or cell phone or anything like that. And this is exactly why, and I like using this example because this is exactly why we don't need an objective. To work hard and gain knowledge in a workforce, also to gain success, to lead a happy and fulfilled life, and be able to provide for my loved ones. Obvious. That's nothing important. Let's look at the experience and just look at how, again, visually, right, everything's very crowded, right? We don't have any spacing. We have very little spacing here. Look at how the date comes first rather than the job, and just and it's just very, and notice how nothing's really in line with anything. So Parsippany is way out here for no reason. Rockaway is over here, and then Franklin Road, Denville are over here, but then Randolph's over here, and Cedar Grove, and this is very awkward. Like read this, right? So you almost think that he went to education for only these years, but then of course he has all this, and so it's just visually it's not helpful at all. Another important factor is look at his jobs, right? We have UPS, Mobile Solutions, Bob Barber, and then Uptown Cuts, right? The problem, and we go into the education too, is I don't know who this person is, right? He has a high school degree. Well, okay, he's supposedly working on a associate's degree in County College of Morris, but it's 2004. Then from 2006 2008, also in progress, which I don't get, he's cosmetology. And then in 2011, he graduated life and health science. So I don't know who this person is. Do they want to be in business? Do they want to go for cosmetology? Barber is a great profession. Or now all of a sudden this person's in a life and health insurance. So I just don't know who this person is. And again, when we look at dates, right, so we have June to December, Jan to Jan, Jan to Jan, Jan to Jan, right? I find it very suspect. It seems kind of weird if he always begins and ends a job in January. Does does he drink too much New Year's, Eve? And so, what's happening here? So there's a lot that's happening visually and a lot that's happening in terms of informationally that really make this a weak resume. And if we look, what we want to do is kind of apply this kind of folding test. And obviously we can't fold this essay. But if we split, notice how much white space excuse me, is on our right and how much text is on our left. Resumes should have some sort of symmetry going on, and that's the kind of key issue. Is when we look at the symmetry here, it's not working because there's so much white space, and then there's a lot of text in this, and all scrunched together, and so visually this just doesn't work at all. Let's look at the good example, right? And this comes from, and immediately notice the difference, right? Look at just visually how much more pleasing this is, right? Notice how she's not being obnoxious and just overinflating her name. Everything's in 12-point font. Notice how it's all the small things that help make this visually pleasing, right? We have everything centered, as he did, which is good. But then we have career history centered, we have computer skills centered, and we have education centered, right? We have the, in all caps and bolded, we have the company. Notice how Lafayette and Lafayette are exactly aligned. And I think, can I pull the ruler over? No, okay, yeah. And then just a little bit of a tab, we have her title in italics, and so the change of font really helps. And then we have the bullet points, right? And think about this. This is a page, right? And then the other one is a page, right? And just notice how someone can successfully convey information in a page, right? And if we just look at this, right, assisted 4 senior executives, member of technology development committee, web design committee, heavy calendaring, faxing, answering phones, credit reports, PowerPoints, coordinated Salesforce automation project, plan to coordinate 2 successful major office moves, develop new computerized purchase order system. Notice how much just in this small bulleted list point we know about this person rather than a whole entire page about this person. So this is someone who knows how to be a professional. And again, we have computer skills, we have a college degree. Now, when this person submitted this resume, I suggested to take the year off because this definitely shows her year. This was originally a 2-page essay, but again, because she was, again, if she graduated in 85, she was much older at the time. And you can see the last job here. This is just a few years ago. So, I removed and told her to remove the date, because that would really reveal her age. But again, because people, really discriminate a lot sometimes against ageism. And so, this is kind of a key issue here. But there's so much you could do on the page, if you really know how to, again, just be concise, be specific. And again, these are all the skills that we're working for on Essay 4 and Essay 3 and all the essays, right? How do you be concise? How do you have a good sense of visual format and style? How do you, again, use specific words, not conversational words, right? And so that's the kind of key issue. And if we apply the same kind of test, right, if you notice, look at the symmetry here, where there's obviously a little white space toward the bottom. But, white space here, there's a good amount of text, There's obviously a little bit more white space at the end, but it's okay because, we don't need to elongate this for any reason. And we still have these words here in all caps that are kind of centered, right, that help us kind of visually, not draw our attention to the white space. And so there's a lot that goes on into a resume, right? You have to research, you have to know the specific terms. Note like heavy calendaring, right, was a good specific example of some kind of term that they're going to look for, right? Words like coordinate, implement, right? All these kind of nice standard words that are not just, I began or I got or I, things like that, that get very cumbersome. Obviously, if you have any questions, please email. Again, these are kind of really important concepts that people just don't think through a lot, right? When people are on the job market, they don't really think about what all goes into presentation, as well as information, and that's important. So obviously, if you have any questions, email. If not, take care.